Um, we all know that Nigeria's GDP is over $500 billion. That's like 250 trillion naira. And probably if you stack that money up here, it's going to be like, I don't know, maybe a million of this hall, right? And 10% of that GDP comes from manufacturing alone, right? So when you look at the kind of outstanding economic miracles that have happened with software development, with companies like Andela, Flutterwave, Paystack, and the likes, the question comes like, what does hardware hold, for the Nigerian economy? Like, how can we unlock economic prosperity for young entrepreneurs, for the Nigerian economy, and all that? And I'm shooting these questions to E. I think you have a mic. Yeah.
Okay, no problems. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you, Netta, for the amazing introduction. One of the things that, that we've realized with the software revolution is that there are many ways that many countries have approached building the kind of ecosystem that we've been able to build here in Nigeria specifically. Let me bring it home, since we're talking about $500 billion in GDP. And I'll paint you a picture. 2010, Nigeria was number 1,000. Lagos, I think, was the highest state, and it was number 1,000 in the startup cities ranking. I think that year we did about $80 million in venture capital. And Nigeria actually itself was, Nigeria was not the number one city. I think the number one city at the time was actually Cape Town. So it wasn't Cape Town, where we were we're below 1,000, and Nigeria was number 5 in the startup ecosystems ranking. In 10 years, we've gone from $80 million to $1.4 billion this year alone. Across Africa, we've gone to $4 billion as of not even at the end of the year. And there are like 2 or 3 more deals I think we did between the beginning of this week and now, we've done $430 million in new deals. And Nigeria is number 1, obviously, with a lot of gap. and we're top 100 startup cities in the world. Lagos is one of the top 100 startup cities in the world. A lot of people haven't really asked what happened between 2010 and now. And it's, a lot of people came together to make that happen. But there are a few inflection points which kind of bring me to answering your question, what needs to happen in the hardware space. So 2010, CC Hub was established. First time a place and experience. Before CC Hub, it was. Before CC Hub, it was. Do you think that one's better? Okay. Hello. Thank you. I don't mind shouting, but I feel like I might scare the security. So, but so before CC Hub, there wasn't quite anywhere you could go and say, as a young person, I want to go and see technology. And I started out in CC Hub. I came back to Nigeria in 2013, and CC Hub was one of the first places that I went to. And I literally built my friendships there, grew up there. A lot of the people who I met there are currently, heavyweights in the industry today. Creating that common space where people are not under pressure and they can just make stuff and engage is critical. And that's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of Make Lab, because that's essentially what they do. So there's that, right? Now, following from that, yeah, people are experimenting with these things, but it takes more than just being a hobbyist to be able to build software. And we realized we had to build a professional cater of people who could actually think about a problem, build software to solve that problem. And so Andela started. And within the last 7 years, we've trained over 100,000 software developers at Andela across 26 states in the country, right? It's probably one of the largest scale software development training programs that the country ever saw. And even more so, we built a very profitable, extremely profitable business doing that. I think companies should clock $100 million in revenue this year. So talent, extremely important. Now, there's other layers. So you talk about, the other thing that we deliberately tried to do as an ecosystem was to do a better job of even understanding who was in the ecosystem, where were they, how much money were they raising, and making sure there were organized ways of accessing and delivering this information to people. So, and that's the wave we're on. Before, you didn't know how much money people raised. Now you do. So data is extremely important. And being able to collect data about how things are progressing, how things are getting easier, what's getting cheaper. I know we have to jump, but the point I want to make is that for hardware to work, the typical options of we got to bring in or we got to fund companies to success with hardware is not going to make sense. Okay. The typical approach of we got to bring some of this technology in and then sell it as a solution is not going to work. You have to really build a grassroots maker movement from the ground up. And that means you're identifying young people. Well, first of all, you're taking things like Make Lab and putting it all over, everywhere you can. I remember there was an attempt with Gear, with GE, but then they put it too far away from the people, so no one could go there. And there has to be a concerted effort to put this in schools and in stuff like that. Second of all, you have to build a cadre of talent, very professionally. Who are the people that can do the the robotics? Who are the people that can do the 3D printing? You've got to build it very intentionally and possibly outsource that talent because there's people all over the world who want these prototyping capabilities. And then before capital can then come in and transform things. But capital is not going to come and transform things. But the good news is, we're ecosystem builders at the Fund for Africa's Future. So we want to invest in building this ecosystem of hardware innovation because we believe that as a firm, we're very dedicated to how do we solve hard problems in large markets. And we've been very daring as a firm. We backed Relief when it wasn't sexy. We backed Mekoto, even though it's not that sexy, but it's going to be very sexy very soon. Yeah. But basically, we've backed companies and initiatives that have pushed hardware innovation. We're not software investors. We're investors in big problems. Okay. And sometimes that means you got to get real. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Now, talking about, I think from what you just said, it seems that the most vital component to this economic transformation and evolution would be talent, yeah? So I want to move on to Olusegun Owode, who I learned about your background. You have deep expertise in understanding risk, and he's been studying it all through school and all that work, So teach us. Right? How do you go about identifying the type of opportunities that entrepreneurs or young people should invest in building?
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah. So, what should the entrepreneurs or young people who are trying to build hardware, what should they look out for? What kind of economic problems should they look out for?
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm going to use my experience coming into entrepreneurship to answer your question. I've been in consulting all my life, and then I came into the startup scene 2 years ago, and then that exposed to me a great deal to the problems that existed within the space, and then from that experience, I was able to come up with this opportunity to create Meko. So basically, it starts with being engaged. You can't be far away from, the system, and then you want to gain an understanding of what's going on there. So we need to be as closer as possible to what's going on. So he mentioned, the CC Hub and the rest of it. There are quite a lot of those platforms these days. So I wanted to encourage, young or aspiring entrepreneurs to try as much as possible to move closer to the scene, because therein, you get to understand the problems, right? And another thing I want to mention is we need to read a whole lot. Now, when I started becoming more interested in entrepreneurship, I was reading about, our GDP, right, and the kind of stuff we import, and that sort of stimulated a lot of interest in me. I read about something very interesting about Nigeria being number one producer of cassava in the world, and it's interesting that we import a lot of stuff that you could make from cassava. So therein you can see that a lot of things is wrong, right? And that will stimulate your interest to say, hey, what if we can put this together to produce this? So it's basically it stimulates interest, and that's where you begin to see that, hey, what can I contribute, to tackle these challenges? So it starts from that, and then another thing is the kind of places you're always, the kind of people you move with is also very important. And if you move with the kind of people,
what kind of people should they be moving with?
Yes. So if you move with the kind of people that always talks about, problem without thinking solution, you are not going to be attracted to that kind of mindset. But if you are always among people, that talks about ideas, how do we solve problems, how do we bring things to life, it naturally stimulates your interest, right? So you want to be very, very deliberate about the kind of companies you want to keep, because that is going to determine how you move as a person.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You guys might not know, but Uzoma, one of the reasons why Relief is such an extraordinary company doing great stuff is that they've made a huge deal out of palm oil, and I know that they're going to do far greater things with other value chains. Let's have a debate, all right? Yeah, I know some of the entrepreneurs, I've listened to them, and they've been arguing about the fact that, software is harder than, hardware. And so a lot of people kind of like, hardware is very simple. Some of that people say, like, hardware is, like, super, super hard. So, like, what's your opinion or take on that?
Yeah, just quickly before I jump into answering your question, I'll give a quick framework in terms of what, where opportunities lie. Quickly for us, we spent about 3 to 6 months jumping in buses from Ojota. I went to 20 different states in Nigeria, looked at 8 different crop value chains. But just because we saw agriculture is very broken, let's understand the different parts of the value chain that are broken, and then you can kind of come up with a solution. One thing that I think it comes to mind with why hardware is not sexy, but the real sector is sexy because they're huge markets. And if you can think about why are these huge markets not being served, why isn't there a lot of value being created, the concept is like non-consumption. So it's either a lot of people in these markets, they can't access the product or service because it's too expensive, so money. They can't access the product or service because of distribution, so it's access. They can't access the product or service because of time, it takes too long. And then the fourth one is skill. And so when you're building products, especially hardware products, how can you tackle one of these four, all of these four, or even when you build your product, you kind of want to, okay, in the beginning, I'm going to make it easier. Later, it can become cheaper, etc. So that can be a good framework you can use when building products in the long term. And that's something you can actually look at your product and apply. I think hardware is actually more difficult than software, mostly because of the iteration timeline. When E came in and invested in us, we had pretty large technical risks to still get through. And so if you aren't able to prove to someone that, hey, you need to take a bet on me because there's such a huge market on the demand side, if the supply side can be solved, and here are things I've done to de-risk my product or my service, then it's worth it. But being able to communicate the idea, why it matters, why it's important, and then prove that, hey, here's a track record of me de-risking this product, then they can believe that in the future, you'll be able to de-risk it. So when he says, oh, it's not just capital, it's not. You have to first show somebody, hey, I had this problem, I fixed it. It was a small problem, but I learned this. I had a larger problem, I fixed it. So people over time say, oh, I believe in you when you tell me you're going to build a $10 billion business in the next 6-7 years, because I've watched you for the last 2-3 years tackle these problems. And that's actually what happened. It's been kind of watching our progress. So I think hardware is actually more difficult than software because of the iteration timeline. But I think the opportunity to create large and very enduring businesses is even more important, because the software market will hit a ceiling where there's not enough people to pay for XYZ services. And so the real sector has to create a lot of value so the software market can even be unlocked more.
Yeah, so let's dive deeper into your story, right? Like, if you want to clap, please clap. Cool. Let's dive into. I think one of the things I loved about your story was that you guys took out time to talk to the customers, which is something like really, really hard for a lot of our innovators to do. Like, people just prefer to invent stuff, right? Teach us about your story. Like, why did you guys have to do the hard work of going to over 20 states to interact with actual buyers, sellers, and stuff like that? Like, and how did you make the decision to select palm oil out of 8 different value chains?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a common problem. We actually started with that problem. We were focused on the product before the customer. And both of us are, all 3 of us are YC alum here. And the motto is talk to customers and build product. You know, that's basically it. So we made the mistake of building something that no one wanted. And we got a lot of ridicule, and someone wrote an article, companies that will die next year, Relief, in 2018. And we said, all that matters, all that outside chatter doesn't matter. What matters are your customers. That's the only people's opinion you should be listening to. And so we said, okay, go from ground zero. What are the problems in the value chain? What are the first principles? And we used a couple things. We said the first thing we want to understand when we look at crops is where is the huge latent demand. So where's the demand already assured where I don't have to create demand? The second thing is, why isn't the demand being met? Is the reason the demand is not being met, is there opportunity for technology to unlock that demand? And then the third was, can I prototype a solution to improve the supply side with the limited capital I have? So cassava and oil palm seem very attractive. The reason we went for oil palm over cassava initially was because the amount of capital we needed to prototype our initial solution would fit better into oil palm than cassava. And then just understanding the unit economics of the different value chains, and it's not just agriculture, became very important, because in the long term, that's going to be what makes your business profitable.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to move on to Olumide. Olumide, you participated in IFA last year. One of the things I love about your story is, like, you're extremely coachable, right? And then you are the kind of person who worked really hard to build your innovation, right? What were the difficulties or challenges you faced trying to build your smart hive? Like, tell us about the story.
Thank you very much. I think we started up as beekeepers using the traditional hive, and we were lucky to get funding, establish these bee farms in about 11 communities, over 3,000 beehives. And we had problems. When you have maybe 20 or 30 equipment to manage, or you don't think there's a problem. By the time you start scaling up, now going to the forest to go and check each of the hives to know whether they're only there, even sometimes when you want to harvest, because the places you place these hives are probably not on the main farm and eating areas. Sometimes you go there and the place is overgrown and you have to be looking for the hives. So these are the problems that were fundamental to us. Now, when I heard about IFR program and innovation for researchers and all this stuff, I felt there could be a solution to these problems. Because if we could find out how to use technology to improve our processes, it would be more efficient. We could scale up. The honey business is one of the most difficult business to scale because it involves a lot of activities on the farm. And beekeepers probably don't think about the ecosystem. I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, a lot of people want to go into beekeeping and they want to do the hive and they place it. They don't think about what the bees are going to consume. They believe the bees are going to fly into the forest and consume anything they like. And their only interest is just to make honey. But we thought about the ecosystem. We thought about the fruits and vegetables. We thought about pollination. So coming to iFair, now, I had this idea in my brain, but had no knowledge of IoT. I don't know anything about IT. But I was surprised with the way they broke down these things. I heard about sensors for the first time when I came here. I never thought sensors could be put in such a way that it could connect with each other. So the problem was already identified before coming. And I had an idea that it could be solved, but I don't know how it will be solved. But they make it possible here. They simplified it, and it took me extra effort. Because at the time we came for the prototype, I think it was 1 week, I had to stay behind. He was my mentor, and I felt if I go back under 1 week, it's not about just designing something, a white elephant project. I want something commercialized. I want something that could actually take back to Ibadan and tell people about it and demonstrate. So I decided to stay behind. When other people are left, I stayed behind. It's going to take you more time, more tasks, because now I have to study the Arduino board. I have to study IoT on my own to understand it. They could help you to buy sensors for you. They're not going to tell you how you're going to apply it. So you need to know about it. So for me, it was a new learning curve. It was difficult in the beginning, but I got to understand it, and it's easy to apply when you understand it. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Olamide. Thank you very much, Olamide. So I'm going to cycle back to E now. And I just want everybody to know you're going to have a chance to ask your questions. We're going to reserve about 5-10 minutes at the end for Q&A. I'll describe the modalities for that when we get there. Yes, I haven't forgotten. We're going to do him like 5-10 minutes before the Q&A. Okay, awesome. Now, one of the things I love about your story is that I describe you like as a captain of different industries, right? Like he's been able to go into fintech, be successful there. He's gone into logistics, yeah, with Move, same thing there. You're now doing VC, same thing there. Education also, yes. You know, I want you to speak as a father, and I want you to talk to the hearts of government officials who are here, university partners from TED Fund and other places who are here. What do we need to support the ecosystem, right? Because like a lot of entrepreneurs talk about how hard it is to get components, you know, to manufacture even their prototypes and even to commercialize it. Like, how do we move from here?
So I think, well, the first thing is really coming at this with a clear, right? Coming to the table with a very clear mission of what innovation can do for the country. And for me, you know, I was in Israel last week. I had an amazing time. I had to cut my trip short because of Omicron. But what I learned there was that this was a country that prized above everything else. It's innovation that preserves its people, right? And there was no price that is too high to pay for the survival of the state of Israel.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, it's going to be very hard to do anything in Nigeria until we get to that point where people will just look you in the eye and say, as far as Nigeria, fine. And we're not there yet. Everybody is still doing their own. So I don't think it would be fair for me to give advice knowing fully well that that precondition is not met, because it requires a national It's not something one person can do. If one person goes and sacrifices himself, it's just roadkill, right? But it's if a whole nation decides that, okay, we are tired, we want to be we want to be, the most powerful nation on earth that is representative of what black people can do. We want to rise to this level of achievement. And the whole country agrees, like the state of Israel did, that this is the Jewish homeland, and we want to be, want to make sure this is a home for Jewish people. And when we get there, then these are now the steps. Right? First of all, you have to invest in your people, in your talent. Every year we give birth to 5 million young people, children, every year. I always joke that we do 2 Israels every year. We do 1 Israel every 2 years. But we're still leveraging a lot of weird, we call it weird research. I don't know what the acronym, I don't recall it, but like Western educated, something. If you look it online, you see it. My point is, look, if we're going to call a spade, if you have 5 million children born every year, you currently have 30 million kids out of school. You currently have, there's no class I've been to, at least in a public school or local school, where you're looking at anything less than 50 to 70 children in a classroom. And we all know that the quality of education they are getting is not worth the school that they are going to. When you come and start telling me about teachers and school buildings, I don't think you are serious about solving the problem. Because we all know that you cannot recruit enough teachers to solve the problem, or train them to the level of quality that you require, or build enough schools. There's no budget in the world that can build enough schools for 5 million children a year. And you already have backlog of 13 million. So when you come to the conference and you're talking about building schools, I'm like, you're not ready. When you are ready, come back and let's have the conversation. What am I saying? We all have to get to the point of understanding that we are in a crisis in every sector, and that we require the most random ideas to get out of it. One of my favorite places we visited in Israel is the Volcani Institute, just outside Tel Aviv. I went there because of these people, Relief, because I knew we started with palm oil, but I wanted us to go to cassava. So I went there on their behalf because I said, let me see what's going on in cassava research. By the way, Israel does not produce cassava, but they have some of the world's best cassava preservation technology that is cheap. It's not something they brought from Germany. You make it yourself. And how did they get there? Because they prioritize research. And it's not just research for the sake of, I want to present paper. It's research that, if this research does not work, our country will be destroyed. So let me just quickly make my point. My point is that until when we are ready, first of all, we have to rise to that level of national consciousness that there's a reason why this country was established, and we all have to work together to get there. But once we do that, the next step is for us to be able to galvanize ourselves to put our talent on our biggest problems and say, if we don't solve this problem, the whole country will be overrun by Boko Haram. And then every resource available must be. Volcani is a 100-year research institute. 100 years.
Awesome.
They have been they invest in agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture is here. Volcani is here. Extension Services is here. For them, it's a matter of life and death. If we don't feed our people, we will be wiped out from the face of the earth. When we get to that level, then you will start to see innovation happen. But for now, we'll just keep triaging triaging, you know how you treat a patient that is just by the grace of God. So you just let's just continue triaging. But when we get to that level of national consciousness, you will be surprised at what kind of magic we'll come up with.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, E. I want to move on to you, Wade. They say simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. One of the things that intrigued me when I read about your company, most of you don't know, but to put it in a very simple language, he has built a platform that makes it possible for you to get your car repaired on time, right? So if you have a car, you order a mechanic, they're going to get your car fixed 100%, all right? I want you to celebrate the simplicity of that idea.
No problem.
Yes, yeah. So, especially for those of you who are already planning how you build like some big robot for us at the end of this affair, we want. All right. So I want you to teach us about this, like focusing on simplicity, right? Yeah. Especially for a lot of people here who think like they have to create something like super complex. You know.
All right. Thanks a lot for that. I think going back to the reason why we want to, to create a startup or something like that, at the end of the day, we want to solve a problem, right? Yeah. So being able to identify the problem that you're solving is very, very important, right? So when I was talking about how I came about this idea, so I came about this idea while working for an e-logistics platform, where I saw that the business was actually losing a lot of money due to poor quality repairs, vehicle repairs and maintenance, right? So I created a reporting dashboard, which was showing like something really, really weird on a daily basis. So I started to ask questions, why? And I was able to narrow down the problem to 3 things. One is the quality of the mechanics working on the vehicles, the quality of spare parts they're using, and then, most importantly, you fix a vehicle today, right? And then you're running interstate, whatever, and then maybe when you get to another location or whatever, you engage a mechanic. He doesn't have an idea of whatever has been done on that vehicle. It starts all over again. Yeah. Trial and error. Yeah. Right? And then what happens at the end of the day is, you're complicating things, and then the vehicle is going from, bad to worse. Yeah. Right? And then you are endangering the lives of other road users. So from that point, I said to myself, I think it's time to tackle this problem. So what do? You want to create a platform, right, with a network of vetted technicians. I want to believe, most people here, I don't know so much about Abuja here, but in Lagos, this is something that has happened to me firsthand, where you call a mechanic, he comes to you, and then he's prostrating like, hey, he's doing you a favor, right? And before you know what's going, because especially if he knows that you don't know so much about vehicle, he starts talking about some terminologies you don't understand. And then if you are very conscious, he comes back the next time, and then you are like, but you told me this same thing last time. He was like, no, the roads are bad. I said, are you the one that will tell me the roads are bad? And so I don't know. So there's a whole lot of, headache. So,
or they will spoil something for you. Yeah? They will repair one thing and spoil something.
Yeah, that's another experience. So, thinking about my personal experience, together with what I saw on the platform, I decided to tackle that problem. Now, I quickly want to mention this, and I think it's very, very important for, aspiring entrepreneurs. Business plan is really, really important as we think about this entire process, right? If you are deliberate about, coming up with a business plan before taking on anything, it's going to show you a lot of things that can potentially go wrong. Now, in our case, I was able to, when I did the business plan, I was able to come up with 10 different use cases for having a platform of vetted technicians, right? So the question now became, where do we start from? Something very simple. So you can go from, very simple to what more sophisticated one. And then we're able to narrow it down to say, hey, if we do it this way, we can start from the most simple to the most complex one. Yeah. And then within a very short space of time, we're able to gain a lot of traction. And then one thing I'm also very happy about is we're supporting a lot of businesses today, awesome. Right? Which is, making a lot of great impacts in the logistics industry. And my customer is here, so by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to jump to Seun Olufolaji. He's joining us online, all right? And he's been doing a lot of awesome work. Like we've been talking about going to the people, going to the customers. So he's been doing a lot of awesome work in Boko, working with a few scientists there to develop innovations. Can we have Seun up? Technical. We want Seun. So maybe why we're expecting Seun to come up, yeah? We could quickly bounce to Uzoma, right? Yeah. I saw you smiling when he mentioned, do you want to talk about the problem he's solving from like the customer point of view?
Absolutely. Logistics is a really good market and a huge, huge problem. Even now as a company that's, we work in agriculture, but we have to internalize some of our supply chain. We have to actually also become a logistics company. One thing I'll share also as people build hardware products is you should try and think about how your product can be a distribution point for other services too. All these mobility companies, all of them start investing in their drivers, their truck drivers. I'm sure you guys will start investing in your mechanics, offering other things. Same thing with us and our farmers. But you can be, again, the initial entry point is you're solving the most simple and pressing problem, the one that's going to make the person more money or save them money so they make more money. And then you can start offering services and other products. But if you try and start with the shiny thing, it's usually not going to work. So always start with the unsexy thing, but the thing that's probably going to make them more money so you can make more money. He said something very interesting, I think a couple months ago, that we have a lot of poor people in Nigeria. If you want to build a really big business, you should figure out how to make a lot of the poor people more money, and then they'll all become your customers. So again, when you're thinking about what product you're going to develop, you have to keep that in mind, because the addressable market in Nigeria can be very different depending on who you're trying to serve. But yeah, logistics is a big problem, and thank you, Meko, for helping us fix some of our trucks much faster.
Oh my God, that's sweet. Thank you very much. Can we have Seun? Hi, Seun. Hi, Seun, we cannot hear you. Can you say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, awesome. You're
Great,
welcome.
great. Thanks.
Seun has been doing a lot of awesome work with Price. And today, Seun, from your experience working with some of these experts in Boko, what do you consider to be like the biggest obstacles like right now with building hardwares?
Okay, so maybe I should quickly start from the end of that initial question you asked, which is harder, hardware or software? And I will start first of all by trying to define a few things. Now, we really talk about physical computing. I don't know whether you are getting my point. We talk about physical computing. Now, physical computing is what deals with sensors, actuators, and all the stuff we've been talking about, and software. I don't know whether you are getting the point I'm trying to make.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
So when you think about it in that sense, that hardware, as we are talking about it, is really physical computing, which is a combination of hardware and software.
That's like 2 in 1, yeah? I think we're losing him. It's a software issue. Yeah, we'll get him back. So while we're waiting for Seun to join us, Olumide, are you ready?
Yes.
I listened to your story and I almost wept. You know what happened now? That thing that happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really, really tough, right? Like setting up innovations in rural communities. Most of the hardware we'll build would be to really help people who are engaged in a lot of manual work, right? Yeah. And some of these people are in hard-to-reach places. He's worked with them, and he went through like a crisis of some sort, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would like you to share these crises with everyone to inspire them and to let them know that life is not always a bed of roses.
Okay. It's not a sweet story, but it's a learning curve. We got attacked on the 7th of August, and we work in the rural area, and we have a demonstration farm. We work with smallholder farmers, but we have our own demonstration farm where we do the training, encourage them to use farmyard manure. You have to demonstrate to them first. And let me start with this. When you're talking of hardware, when you create a solution and the people to use it don't know how it works, is a problem. So the training part, like Andela did, is very important. So we have a demonstration farm, and IFI gave us a lot of traction. We started having coverages. We have the British Council comes, we have Channels TV comes, and I think rural people, sorry to say this, sometimes transform seeing jeeps and cars that you have a lot of money. So maybe this is where they felt we are now a big company, because we've been in that area for almost 4 years. And, okay.
He's having that. Okay. 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 Just 1 minute. I would like him to finish his thought line. Yeah. So, Sheon, are you there?
Oh, yes, I am. Sorry. Okay. It's this our Nigerian network.
Yeah. Yeah, we understand. It's a software issue.
It's a software issue.
Yes.
All right. So, like I was saying, we have physical computing, which is a combination of hardware and software. So in the real sense of it, when you get to the depths of it, software is just surface. For every hardware, you need a accompanying software, depending on the level at which you are talking about. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you are talking about artificial intelligence systems, where you have a computer software running some things, sending over some links to a piece of sensor, an actuator, a microcontroller chip or whatever, you are talking about a whole lot. And so there is a need, and that brings me to where the challenge is, which is some of the things we're working at. The challenge for hardware, coming to the basics, I'm talking now as someone that's been in the field for over 15 years as an educator, over more than that in terms of experience. There's a lot that has to do with knowledge gain. There's a lot that has to do with information. There's a lot that has to do with a lot of technicalities. You have Olumide with the Beehive talking about the challenge you had to come in to understand Arduino. Now you see, Arduino itself has limitations. We are championing a course of developing our own boards. We use our own boards. We develop our own boards, microcontroller boards, even though it's following that pattern of Arduino, but with functionalities that makes it easier for students to do what they need to do. So you have less to bother about the electronics, the resistor readings and all that. And just go ahead with your idea. We look at all that makes it more complex for students, both at the primary school, secondary school, and tertiary level to transit. Because some things that you need to do with hardware, you need high-level electrical electronics knowledge to actually achieve it. So much of even what we have achieved within the Nigerian space is so limited as far as I have been able to be exposed to. Now, I've taken students outside the country for different challenges organized by Intel ICF. We've been to Phoenix, Arizona, and we've seen projects at a different scale. You understand? We've seen high-level projects, you've seen artificial intelligence systems and all that, and that's poured us on to say, look, we can do this also in Nigeria, and we began to push that. Now, we began to have some breakthroughs, but one critical thing that was essential was what you pointed out at some point. There has to be what you call corporate will. There has to be organizational will, because many times in hardware, the results don't come out so quick. You're starting, you're working. There's a lot of, and that's what I wanted to point out. There's a lot of burns you roast things, you fry components. Because you just make a simple mistake. In software, you have a bug, it just simply doesn't work, you reverse back, and you get it working. But in hardware, once you make a mistake, something is fried. And so whoever needs to sponsor the knowledge gain in hardware has to be prepared for some losses. It's over time you gradually master some things, you gradually become able to actually do something. So the challenge for physical computing, let me use that word now, for physical computing is vast in that sense, but also I must say that the prospect is also vast. There's a lot that can be achieved. Now, software, I'm happy with what software has done. I'm happy with where we are in software in Nigeria. But that, sincerely speaking, let us ask ourselves a few questions. The software companies have become multi-million-dollar companies. How many people are they able to employ? How many middle-class people are they able to elevate? Check the world over. The middle class are supported by manufacturing, by producing, by innovating and coming out with real products that people get to be able to use. That's what actually changes a nation. That's what gives you export. The software we're talking about now, they are bringing investments, they are working for the investors, but how many people, how many lives are being changed by it? It's successful, it's a beautiful story, we have achieved a lot, but like he's pointing out, it's time to invest in physical computing because that's the next big thing. If you look at all the big nations in the world, talk about Israel, talk about United States, talk about Russia, talk about China, go there. There is manufacturing, there's production, there's working on physical components, there's producing a lot. Now, those opportunities exist even in Nigeria, but a lot has to be done from the grassroots up, like you pointed out. A lot has to be understood even on the investor side about sometimes your product might take 3-4 years before you finally get it running up.
I need to wrap up. I need to wrap up.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Just one line.
I don't know if we asked the question on economics, but maybe I will stop at that point. So what happens, wrapping up, is secondary school level, university level, people can't get components like they can get laptops.
Yeah.
Once I have a laptop, I can write a software. I can write any number of software once I have internet connection. But for a single project, you might need money worth more than a single software. That is one of the major challenges. And from the grassroots, you have to change the orientation. And that was possible because already as far back as 2002, we had young people that were already in software.
Okay.
So Andela gave them leverage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. So guys, we will be unable to take questions, but here's what you get in exchange for that. We've picked a number of key lessons, right? We've picked the fact that simplicity is like the ultimate sophistication, right? We've also talked about the importance of talking to your customers, which Wade and Uzoma talked about. Then we've talked about, like, we need to become a very serious set of people, right? That was one of the major points Ian talked about. So once again, thank you very much, Neta. Thank you very much, Aife. Yeah, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you, guys.